Thank you for joining us today for this webinar about the PSEG Long Island Battery Storage Rewards Program. My name is Tony Vernetti, and I'm a trainer at Enphase Energy, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. So today's agenda, we are going to start with, jumping around here. Talk about the Enphase Grid Services Advantage. Why should you partner with Enphase for not just the PSEG Long Island program, but for all grid services programs that might be possible where your businesses operate. We're going to talk about the current program as well as the future program, because there is going to be a change in the rebate program within the next couple of months. So it's important to know what we have today and what's coming up. We're going to talk about the customer journey. So all the steps that a customer goes through, the entire process from end to end. We have about a 4 or 5 minute demo video of how to use the Enphase Grid Intake Portal to submit applications specifically to Enphase to participate in these programs. And lastly, we're going to have an interview with Reid Garton from New York State Solar, who has tons of experience with this rebate program. He's going to give us some insight into how to navigate that program. We'll talk about the next steps and then have a Q&A at the end. So I'd like to introduce everybody who's on the call today. Steve Lasher is business development for Grid Services. He is kind of in charge of getting these programs up and running, communicating with the utilities to make sure that everything they're doing and we're doing is going to work seamlessly together. We also have Sarah Sawanjandar, who is a marketing lead for Grid Services at Enphase Energy. We have Bachala Kaushik, who's a product manager in charge of Grid Services. So he basically makes sure that things are working on the back end and has created the customer experience that we're going to go through. Reid Garton I did introduce already, and then we also have Josh Brown on the call. He's going to present a few slides. He's a business specialist at PSEG Long Island, so he understands exactly how this program works from the utility perspective, and is going to give us some useful information about today's program as well as the upcoming program that I mentioned earlier. Thank you very much for joining all of you today and helping us with this webinar. So I'm going to do just a quick overview of the Enphase Grid Services Advantage. Why work with Enphase for a grid services program? And actually, I'm just going to pause here, and we're going to have our cameras off so you can maximize the screen view, and we'll bring cameras back on at the end for the Q&A. So Steve, go ahead and turn your camera off if you would. Thanks. The Enphase system is ready today for grid services programs, not just the PSEG Long Island program, but many different grid services programs around the country, including some others in the Northeast and Hawaii and Arizona. We offer a very easy to use interface for homeowners and for installers. Homeowners can manage their grid services program directly from the homeowner app, the same app that they use to monitor their solar and storage system. And we also offer 24/7 customer support. This is very rare in the solar industry, but when Enphase became we started selling batteries for battery backup and other purposes, we became an essentially energy provider. So we felt it was important to be able to offer 24/7 support. So no matter when you need support, you can call Enphase and actually talk to a real human being in a short period of time and get some support. We also offer 24/7 support for installers, and installers can very easily manage all of the rebate applications and other incentive applications through the Enphase interface. We try to make it as easy to use for installers and homeowners, and we have a lot of information, of course, available on our website about the available programs for the use of installers as well. Okay, now I'm going to hand the mic over to Steve Lasher to talk about current and future program overview.
Thanks, Tony. I'll share this part of the presentation with Josh Brown from PSEG. So I'll talk a little bit about the current program and some of the eligibility requirements, and then Josh will provide a little more background and overall process, including the NYSERDA certification and future program that we're expecting soon. So what's the purpose of the program? It's basically to reduce strain on the electric grid during high demand hours. So reducing peak load. And we can do that by discharging these Enphase batteries during conservation events. That's an event where we're trying to reduce peak demand. The eligibility for this program is really any new battery storage system, so any new installation paired with solar PV. Could be new solar, could be an existing solar PV, as long as the battery is new. How it works is that aggregators like Enphase will remotely discharge the customer's batteries during the conservation events. The conservation events are called by PSEG, and they call those when they forecast that they're going to need to reduce demand on the grid for the next day. So we get a bit of advance notice, we schedule those events, and we discharge the batteries, the customer's batteries. We will set the customer's battery to full backup mode as soon as the event is created, and that will allow us to fully participate, or the customer's batteries to fully participate in the program. The customer incentive is $250 a kilowatt hour as of now. There is a limit to the number of batteries that will receive that incentive, and Josh is going to talk about changes to the program. But for now, it's still $250 a kilowatt hour of usable energy, which is about $2,500 for our IQ Battery 10, because that IQ Battery 10 is about 10 kilowatt hours. In addition, Enphase will send out annual gift cards to customers that actively participate in the program. And right now we're targeting $50 gift cards for IQ Battery 10s, $20 gift cards for IQ 3s, and those would be for every customer that participates in 80% of the events. The customer commitment here is to discharge 80% of their home battery during each event, and this is for 5 years. So in exchange of that upfront incentive, customer has to agree to this participation. And luckily, it's only about 10 events per year. At least that's what it has historically been and expected to be, and up to about 4 hours. So it's not a especially onerous requirement in terms of how many hours of conservation events participation is required. And the program is limited to basically May 1st through September 30th. Outside of those periods, there wouldn't be any discharge events scheduled. The only exception to that is during the beta period, which was already completed. And so any new batteries do not have to worry about that. But typically when we launch a program, there's a beta testing period, which is typically outside of the program period. But as I mentioned, there will be no more beta testing required on this program as we've already completed it. Go to the next slide. So the current customer incentive, and there's about $80,000 left in funding for this sort of tranche of funding funded through NYSERDA. Excuse me. So I mentioned $250 a kilowatt hour. There's a maximum per customer. So for an IQ Battery 10, exactly the number would be $2,520, and for an IQ Battery 3, it's $840 for each. So there could be multiple of each of these batteries, and you would receive the total incentive up to the maximum. Next slide. Some of the key eligibility requirements, which I think Josh will go into some additional detail, but from our point of view, basically the customer needs to be enrolled in the Battery Storage Rewards Program. They need to submit an application to Enphase's Grid Intake Portal. And there's a link here, and we'll actually have a demonstration of how to use that Grid Intake Portal, a quick 5-minute demo toward the end. So, and after that is done, Enphase will validate and submit the application to PSEG for their approval, and then any approved applications are enrolled in the program. The installers should work with the customer to make sure that the Enphase control settings will enable the battery to have sufficient energy to meet the program requirements. So specifically, the battery reserve level needs to be set at 20%. It shouldn't be set any higher than that. Storm guard mode should not be engaged during the conservation events dispatch period. This should be okay because the conservation events won't be called before or during a major storm. That will ensure that if there is widespread outage due to a major storm, the customer should not have had any grid services events called. There should be no conservation events, and so they should have their full backup. However they set their battery to be managed, and there shouldn't be any interruptions from that conservation event if there's a major storm approaching. The customer can be enrolled in either Smart Savers or the Battery Storage Rewards program, but not both. So if a customer was on Smart Savers and they enrolled in Battery Storage Rewards, they'll be automatically unenrolled from Smart Savers, which is a smart thermostat program. And next slide. In terms of additional requirements, what is actually contracted, the contracted power is a little bit different depending on the battery model. So for an IQ battery 10, as we mentioned, the usable capacity is 10.08 kilowatt hours, and that's what customers and installers get paid for that battery. But the actual committed discharge is going to be 80% of that, so it's a little over 8 kilowatt hours. And then the contracted power would be the amount of, equivalent power over a 4-hour period, which is basically 8 divided by 4, or around 2 kilowatts. So that's what you're actually going to enter into an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file, which you'll see later. It's going to be 2 kilowatts for every IQ battery 10 and 0.67 kilowatts for every IQ battery 3. And that's actually the power we're committing to for each of those customers. Next slide. I'll have Josh kind of go over some additional program requirements and talk a little bit about the future program. Josh, turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Steve. So a little introduction, but first, just having it seems like PSEG Long Island's having a little bit of trouble with the outlook and everything. What's the title of the slide? Just so I'm on the same page.
The title is NYSERDA Incentive Application Requirements. Do you have that
Gotcha.
slide with you? Okay.
No, I don't know. That whole looks like the system's crashing, but that's fine. So yeah, good morning, everyone. Just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Josh Brown. I'm with PSEG Long Island. I help support the solar and battery storage programs within PSEG Long Island. And first off, just wanted to say thanks to Enphase for inviting me to participate in this webinar. We're both trying to grow the amount of battery storage customers that we see on Long Island and the amount of participation that we see in the utilities demand or battery storage rewards program. So right, Steve did a really good overview of the requirements for the NYSERDA incentive and a general overview of the battery storage rewards program. So I'll just kind of go 1 or 2 steps further and fill in some gaps. In terms of eligibility requirements, all customers now and in the future PSEG Long Island incentive will need to enroll in the PSEG Long Island Battery Storage Rewards program in order to receive this upfront incentive. So this means contractors will need to work with participating battery storage aggregators like Enphase to enroll the customer into the demand response program and remotely dispatch the customer's battery storage system when a demand response event is called. Steve's right, there are about 5 or 10 demand response events each summer, so there shouldn't be too many concerns from customers about having the utility control their batteries too much. It's a little bit more of a, I guess, like a first step program. It's, not really asking a lot of the customers. Compensation is pretty good through the upfront incentive. The annual compensation, like Steve said, is the $50 gift card through Enphase. So, obviously that could be, greater, but we're also not asking a ton. You do have to be a participating NYSERDA contractor in order to receive the upfront incentive, and you must meet the standards set by NYSERDA. For anyone that may be looking for more information on how to become a NYSERDA participating contractor, I provide the links here in my presentation slides. NYSERDA provides a very detailed overview on how to become a participating contractor, as well as a step-by-step overview process on how to actually apply for the incentive as well. You can go to the next slide. So this is the incentive application process. So in terms of the
Josh,
process,
yes, that we're on that
yeah,
slide.
okay.
Sorry about that. Okay.
No, thank you, I appreciate it. So in terms of the process of how contractors could apply for either the current NYSERDA battery storage incentive or the future PSEG Long Island incentive, the process will be the same. Contractors will log in to the NYSERDA portal and fill in the necessary project information. I want to stress that contractors should be applying for the incentive right after the point of sale. Applying for the incentive simply reserves the incentive for your particular project. All project applications have 1 year beginning from the initial application to being fully installed. So there's a good amount of lead time. I've outlined the necessary documents that will need to be provided in every battery storage application as well in my slides. Most importantly, I just wanted to highlight the last bullet stating proof of enrollment. Proof of enrollment is necessary before we could issue the incentive to the contractor. So what this means is we need to confirm that the customer is indeed enrolled in the demand response program. It's the job of the aggregator, in this case, Enphase, to enroll the customers into the demand response program. And in order to do so efficiently, that will require some customers and some customer and project information that the aggregator needs to receive from the contractor. So that there's, just a minimal amount of delay between the contractor submitting those final documents and waiting on the aggregator to enroll the customer into the demand response program. It will be important to collect all customer information and sign documents at the point of sale and provide that information and sign agreements to the aggregator, who then could enroll the customer once that customer is actually installed. What we see is, sometimes we see that the contractor uploads all the information and they're waiting on the incentive, but we can't issue the incentive because, the aggregator didn't upload the customer soon enough. So that's all I'm trying to stress. I'm just trying to make sure that there's an open link of communication between the contractor getting the aggregator the information that they need. You can go to the next slide.
All right, we're on the next slide. That's a new PSEG Long Island Residential Energy Storage System Incentive.
Okay, perfect. So, right. So I just wanted to shed some light on the future, and I touched on it a little bit, on the future of the upfront battery storage incentive. As we know, the current NYSERDA $250 per kWh residential incentive is based on a declining block incentive. They initially allocated $3 million to this block, and like Steve said, about 800,000 remains. And we're anticipating that to run out this June or this July. So we have a couple months left. NYSERDA unfortunately doesn't have any plans to create a subsequent block incentive. However, PSEG Long Island will be creating a new block incentive to take immediate effect upon the closure of the current NYSERDA block incentive. We designed the future PSEG Long Island incentive to be extremely similar to the current NYSERDA incentive. It's not for laziness purposes, but it's just so that the contractor is already very familiar with the process and design, and there's not a big confusion or complexity to it. So the new incentive is going to be set, so beginning when the NYSERDA incentive closes. So this summer, the PSEG Long Island incentive will be set at $200 per kWh, with enhanced incentives offered for low to moderate income and disadvantaged communities. The incentive will continue to be provided directly to the contractor, who in turn reduces the upfront purchase price to the customer. $900,000 will be allocated to the first block incentive of $200 per kWh, and then when that runs out, the second PSEG Long Island incentive is going to have another $900,000 in a block, and it's going to be offered at $150 per kWh. So you could see the declining block incentive structure. We'll also be putting together some marketing materials and doing some outreach and advertisements of our own, and providing some supplies for contractors to do so as well. I think that's it. I'm going to hang around, and I'll turn it back over to the Enphase team to keep going. But thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Josh, for all that additional detail about the program. It's super helpful. Okay, now I'm going to hand the mic to Kaushik, who is going to talk about the customer journey.
Hi everyone, good morning again. So let's talk about the journey, how the enrollment and everything happens here. So when a customer wants to enroll in PSEG battery storage rewards program, so they normally come to installers to install the site, and so installers should be under New York State's Sun program and offer the installation for PV plus battery storage system. So this is just a prerequisite from PSEG point of view. I hope everyone knows about this that region. And then once the request is registered, installers can visit Enphase Grid Intake Portal. So this is located at grid-intake.enphaseenergy.com. So there, the TN Enphase terms and conditions document is available, and the NYSERDA customer attestation form is also available. So we can go through the document, get it signed from the homeowner, and I believe PSEG has their own portal where you are submitting the request before the installation. So you can work with PSEG there, get the approval for installation, complete the installation, and that is when once the installation is complete, that is when the complete enrollment process starts from Enphase. So for any installed site, you need to just visit the gridintake.enphaseenergy.com portal. I'm talking about step 3 and 4 here, where you need to come to the portal. So there will be 3 documents available in the portal. One is Enphase TNC document, the other is the customer attestation form, and there is an enrollment CSV template, which is available in the portal. So installers has to download that enrollment CSV template. So once you download and open the templates, so we have marked all the fields that you need to fill in that template. So it's a big template with around 45 entries, but not everything is mandatory. So there are around 15 entries which are mandatory. We have listed them in the template. So you have to just fill the details in the template and re-upload the same along with an application. So for a single application, so you can, I think Tony has created a great video where you can go through that. But for each application, you need to fill the application details and submit the enrollment CSV form, Enphase terms and condition form, and the NYSERDA customer attestation form as well. So when you submit the application, so that is the completion of step 4 here. So coming to step 5, so that means when installer submits an application to us, so we validate that application from our end. So we verify whether the entered Enphase site ID matches with the customer or not. The entered CSV has captured all the correct details or not. And we validate everything from our end. And later, so PSEG has a portal where we need to submit each application request. So in their portal, as aggregator, we submit an application on your behalf. So we'll be indirectly uploading the enrollment CSV, which you will be uploading in the portal. So that is where the enrollment CSV is very important. So we upload that in the PSEG portal. So once they provide the approval in the portal, we validate that portal on daily basis. So it's not automated there. So we upload the application on daily basis. We check the portal on daily basis. If any application is approved there, we will provide the final approval as well. You can follow the statuses in the grid intake portal as well. And once PSEG provides approval, the final approval will be provided for the application, and that's when we enroll the site into the program. So once enrolls, then whenever PSEG is sending us event creation emails, we'll schedule the events on the site, and site will be able to discharge as part of the program. So just to give a recap, installer visits the portal, downloads the documents. They will work with the PSEG offline before installation. And once installation is complete, they'll come to the portal, submit an application with enrollment CSV and the other documents. We will validate it, we'll approve it from our end, and then we submit it for PSEG approval. Once PSEG approves, the final approval will be done and the site will be enrolled into the site. Once enrollment is complete, that's when the events and everything will be conducted on that particular site.
All right, thank you very much for that overview, Kaushik. Now let's take a look at the tutorial video, which is basically kind of a step-by-step walkthrough of what Kaushik described there. Hello, and welcome to this tutorial video on how to use the Enphase Grid Services Installer Intake Portal to submit an application for the Battery Storage Rewards Program available from the Public Service Enterprise Group, or PSEG for short, an electric utility in Long Island, New York. To begin, go to the web address grid-intake.enphaseenergy.com. Enter your Enphase ID and password and sign in. Select the Grid Services program for which you want to submit an application. I'm going to select the Battery Storage Rewards Program. If you have already submitted applications, you'll see them listed here on the Applications Tracker page. The first step in the process is to complete 3 required forms. These forms can be downloaded by clicking Download Program Documents and clicking the download icon. The 3 forms are the NYSERDA Customer Attestation Form, PSEG Enrollment Form, and the Enphase Terms and Conditions. The NYSERDA form is a PDF with limited information required. Please complete the form and have your customer sign. Electronic signature is acceptable. The PSEG Enrollment Form is a CSV file with several required fields. They are highlighted in the first 2 rows and also listed here under mandatory fields, with guidelines on how to complete some of the fields. Complete the required fields on the second row of the form. Please note that there are many columns on this form that extend past the right border, so make sure you scroll to the right to ensure you complete all required cells. The third form is the Enphase Energy Grid Services Agreement Form, also called the Terms and Conditions document. Please have your customer sign this form. And again, electronic signature is acceptable. Once you have these forms completed and signed, you can proceed to the next step, Submit New Application. Fill out all fields on this page, starting with the Enphase Site ID. The Site ID can be found in the Enphase Installer Portal, formerly called Enlighten Manager. Go to a site, and then you'll see the site ID in the URL right after Systems. In this example, the site ID is 3507306. You can also find the site ID by clicking on the gear icon for settings. And the site ID is here near the top, labeled System ID. Near the bottom of the form, you must enter the DLRP contracted amount in kilowatts. The maximum contracted amount of power for an IQ Battery 10 is 2 kilowatts, and the max for an IQ Battery 3 is 0.67 kilowatts. Add up the max contracted power for your combination of IQ Battery 3s and IQ Battery 10s. Entering a higher amount of power than the maximum will result in an application being rejected. On the right side of this page, you can upload the 3 required forms one at a time. Lastly, check the box next to I confirm the following and click Submit. Once the application has been submitted, you can view its status on the Applications Tracker page along with a timestamp. I'm going to pull up applications that are approved by PSEG. Click into the application to see additional detail. Here you can see which of the steps the application is currently in and view a timeline of when the steps were completed. View Timeline is next to the application ID. You will also receive an email notification when the application process has reached each step. The final step of the process is approved by PSEG.
That concludes this tutorial. If you would like additional support, please email us at gridservices@enphase.com.
All right, hopefully that video played correctly and everyone was able to hear and see it. And now I'd like to hand the mic over to Sarah Suwanjandar and Reid Garton, who are going to talk about basically how to how to navigate this program and make the most of it, as Reid has a lot of experience with it, as I mentioned.
Thanks, Tony. Welcome, Reid. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I know we've spoken before, you have a lot of great experience with the program. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us here today. To kick things off, would you like to just give a little bit of introduction about New York State Solar?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. NY State Solar is a New York City-based installer that covers all of Long Island, the 5 boroughs of New York City, and Westchester. We have installed Enphase for many years, among other options. Worked with several manufacturers, but of our thousands of installs that are on the roof in downstate New York, the majority are Enphase. So we have a lot of experience with both your IQ product on the roof and the Encharge batteries in garages and other parts of houses.
Excellent. So directing attention to the program specifically, I'm curious, how have you been informing customers about the program?
So the salesperson brings it up as part of the presentation because it's, of course, a requirement to receive the NYSERDA incentive. And the NYSERDA incentive is one of the critical ways that the battery numbers will make more sense to a customer.
And what do you find that's working well, when you are going through the education about the program? How are homeowners responding to it? Are they proactively inquiring about the program?
No, not really. I mean, it's in its current form, minimal compensation for your battery being aggregated with others. It doesn't really move the needle on the financial end. We're registering them so that they can receive the incentive.
That's great. Can you share a little bit, obviously the genesis behind the program is to add storage and to try and entice homeowners to do so. Can you share a little bit about your experience helping homeowners that are trying to expand an existing system to include Enphase batteries? What's your experience working with the batteries and why are you a fan of them?
Yeah, absolutely. They're very easy for us to retrofit onto any of the thousands of Enphase systems that we've installed across Long Island. With its IQ6s, 7s, 8s on the roof, we're able to easily come in and install and pair that battery up with the system. It's seamless for the customer because it all works together in the Enphase app, which is, the best facing customer interface that we've found among the 4 manufacturers that we've installed batteries from. It's very customer friendly and installer friendly. We have excellent commissioning times, a seamless installation process compared to other batteries that we've installed. And it's a hit with both our team and the customers.
Excellent. That's a great overview. Are you seeing any kind of surge in demand from homeowners in general that are wanting to expand their systems to include batteries?
We've definitely seen a bit of an increase in interest over time, particularly when there's a big storm that comes through. When one of the tail ends of a hurricane hits or a windstorm that knocks out power, it often reminds people like, oh, I can lose power and I have a solar system on my roof, and for the most part it's not going to do anything for them if you don't have a battery paired to it. Of course, your guys IQ8 with a transfer switch can solve that, but battery is still a more comprehensive solution, and most customers don't have IQ8s with a transfer switch to allow them to do the sunlight backup mode. when it comes to a customer looking for a battery solution, there's a lot of things that will make us, point them in the direction of Enphase, from the technology end.
Excellent. Josh discussed some of the changes on the horizon with the PSEG program. What's your perspective on how some of those changes would, further benefit homeowners, particularly those that might be on a time of day program?
Yeah, first of all, we're happy to see PSEG continuing the incentive program, the upfront incentive, because that's critical for helping customers afford a battery. But what the time of day is going to do is allow customers to, for the first time in New York, monetize a battery. It'll allow them to charge it during the day. And if you have that customer that's at 70 or 80% solar offset, if they're charging it up during the day, during off-peak, and then setting it to discharge during peak, with the ratio of credits between peak and off-peak, it's looking like they'll be able to close the gap on offsetting, nearly 100% of their bill, even with the solar system that doesn't produce 100% of their annual usage. And it's really exciting because up until now, the economics for a battery were not as good as other parts of the country. There was no way to monetize it on an ongoing basis. And while the ITC and the NYSERDA incentive, soon to be PSEG incentive, helped defray some of the expense, you weren't breaking even on a battery on Long Island. Time of day is going to give customers an opportunity, if it's designed right by the installer, if the right expectations are set by the installer staff, and if the customer utilizes it in accordance with those guidelines and instructions, to get at or near 100% offset, even without a system that produces 100%. And that's really exciting because that'll let customers actually generate savings from their battery in New York for the first time.
It's very exciting. Great observations on what's on the horizon. Really excited about those changes that Josh outlined. Well, I know, speaking to some of the installers that we have with us here today, do you have any, advice that you would offer to them along the way on if they're just getting started with the program, enrolling homeowners in the program? Any words of wisdom you might impart?
Yes, do the paperwork early. When you're meeting the customer to do the permit application paperwork, have them sign the forms that are needed for the DLM so that you're not trying to chase them down after install to get them to sign more forms. Have the forms printed out, do them when you're signing the permit. It will be much easier for your team to have it already signed and submit it after install, as opposed to tracking the customer down again.
Excellent. If you're joining us today and you have other questions for Reid or anyone else on the Enphase front, be sure to type those questions in, because Tony, I'll hand it back to you, but I think we're moving in the direction of our Q&A. So if you have other questions for Reid, feel free to type those in here. Thank you, Reid.
Yeah, thank you very much, Reid. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'd just like to talk a little bit about training opportunities at Enphase. For those of you who are new to Enphase Energy Systems with IQ batteries, we do require certification in order to install our battery systems. Just want to make sure that best practices are followed and that you have a very smooth and relatively easy experience with installation and commissioning. We offer training in all these 4 categories that you see here. So we offer a sales training course that's about 2 to 3 hours that I helped design. And we offer Enphase storage installation training. This is the required course, or I should say one of the required courses in order to become certified and for your company to be authorized to install Enphase battery systems. We also offer Enphase storage design. This is also a required course to become for a company to be authorized. And lastly, Enphase solar installation. This is not a required certification. It's just a great course for companies who have not installed Enphase solar previously. And for those of you who would like to get some hands-on experience, we do have a number of what we call regional training centers around the country, including in New York, where basically all of our gear is mounted on the wall of a distributor, and you can register for this hands-on training through Enphase University. and then go and spend a day with an Enphase trainer and get your hands on the equipment and really learn how it's all wired up correctly and have an opportunity to ask questions of an Enphase system expert. So those are excellent trainings. The space is very limited for hands-on training, so if you're interested, please get on Enphase University and register for the next event that's happening in your region. A few links here related to next steps. So the first link here will take you to a page about getting authorized and certified to install. We have a LinkedIn group. This is a great place for for Enphase installers. I mean, it's really open to anybody. So it could be installers, it could be homeowners to share their experiences with the grid services program, exchange ideas, etc. Here's a link to the grid services page on the Enphase website. If you'd like additional detail or information about not just this program, but all the programs that Enphase is participating in around the country. And then the last link is for the Grid Intake Portal, where you submit applications for this program and others. And if you do have any questions, please email us at the email listed here below at gridservices@enphase.com. We have several people on staff that this is their what grid services is what their job is dedicated to, so we can usually get back to you with a good response within 24 hours or so. So if you do have any questions, please go ahead and type those into the questions tool. And Steve or Kaushik, if anyone who's on the line, if there are any closing remarks or comments that you'd like to make, now would be a great time to do that as well.
I had maybe a question, if Josh, I could put you on the spot here, if you wanted to speak any more about the time of use tariff that was mentioned in the interview portion of this call.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, so LIPA and PSEG, we're putting together a time of day rate where we're taking all customers on Long Island beginning next year, and we're going to transition them over to this new time of day rate. And for solar and battery storage, this is going to be a really exciting opportunity because, like Reid was saying, a lot of times a battery storage customer, the primary reason for installing a battery storage system is to have power when there's a grid outage. And that's kind of first and foremost. And then in addition to the customer getting that benefit, we said, well, all right, we're going to offer that incentive, and they have to enroll in the utilities demand response program. So there's now a utility benefit as well. But there wasn't much of a revenue stream associated with enrolling in the demand response program. So for certain customers, being on this time of day and being able to shift load from that during the off peak, during the day period, to the nighttime, which is the peak period, that could create a lot of bill savings. So we performed some analysis internal just within the company, within the utility, and it looks like that, I forget the numbers, but there's going to be a large portion of customers that if they do solar and battery storage, and if the installer installs it in the correct ways, that they're going to be able to achieve like a 5 or a 10-year payback period for their battery storage system, which will actually be able to actually offset the cost. So it's going to expand that target market away from customers that just want resiliency during a grid outage to customers that also want that, but maybe don't want to put up that investment with no return on investment. So that's going to be a really exciting opportunity, and it should really grow the amount of people that get battery storage. Right now, about 10% of all solar customers choose to add a battery storage system. So we're really looking to push that number closer to like 20 to 30 to, eventually to 100% of customers. So, that's a long time away, but this is an important step towards getting there.
Thank you, Josh. I think that's great. Any other questions related to the time of day rate?
Nope, I haven't seen any additional questions come in. All right, well, thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. Again, if you do have questions about anything we covered today or about grid services in general, please send those to gridservices@enphase.com, or you can reply to the email confirmation for the webinar, and I'll make sure that your question gets to the correct person. So I'd like to thank not just the people who joined us today to learn about grid services, but also all the participants today, Steve, Sarah, Josh, Reid, and Kaushik. Appreciate your time, participation. Well, actually, one question did come in, actually, just noticed it. Question from Lou. Sorry, I'm trying to understand the question here.
I think the question is, when will the time of day rate become active?
That's right.
Okay, so right, it's still under the stakeholder process. So assuming it goes through, which it looks like, and every indication looks like it will, customers will start being transitioned next year, beginning in 2024. And I forget which, but certain customers are going to start right away in January of next year. And then, I think battery storage customers transition 6 months later, so next June of 2024. So the rollout, long story short, the rollout towards time of day will begin January of 2024.
I'm just going to add a note there for Lou. If you want to reach out to the NYSEA staff for me, happy to loop you in and bring you up to speed. NYSEA has been working closely with LIPA and PSEG on this since the working group for it was rolled out over a year ago. And our input to make it solar and storage friendly has been thus far received. There's a few tweaks that we're asking for, just to make sure that it works well for all customers with solar and storage. But LIPA and PSEG have been actively working with us, and if you want to come up to speed and have any feedback to share with the residential working group at NYSEA, just feel free to reach out to Jonathan or Noah or myself.
And along the lines of time of day too, we are looking for, when we have that PSEG Long Island battery storage incentive, which will take effect soon, we are looking to allow customers that are on a time of day rate to possibly also participate on the demand response program. Still waiting on the final answer on, how that compensation will play out. But, customers that participate in time of day will also be able to receive the upfront battery storage incentive. So really, whatever method, whether it's the demand response or time of day, what other method makes sense, that'll be the best for the customer, and that'll be fine for the battery storage incentive as well.
All right, thanks for that additional info, Josh. And again, thanks to everybody for joining us today. We hope you are able to sign up a lot of customers and have a lot of success with this program and others. Have a wonderful day. Take care.